Greetings and salutations. Once again, we are back with our one talent challenge. This time in Nightmare. We did kill Bale. We managed to finish that, and now we have 2 talents to work with. And in the last video of pardon me, I've been having that bit of an issue with my phlegm, so to speak. However, in the last video, when we killed Bale, we managed to get into Nightmare, and that got us the second talent, because we only get 1 talent per difficulty. So now that we're in the second talent, we chose Wolf. Now, I'm not going to put a point... Yes, Akara, we know there's a place of great evil. We knew that the first time. I'm not going to put a point into Dire Wolf, because that's how the tree normally goes, is it goes down, Wolf, Dire Wolf, so on and so forth. The reason I'm not going to put a point into Dire Wolf is simply because Dire Wolf is physical damage, okay? And when we get out of Nightmare and we get into Hell, we're going to need a third type of damage. Wolves do cold damage. Mercenary does physical, I do physical, Ravens do physical. So that leaves us with not many options for extra damage or different types of damage. So instead, we have to see... Let's get my army all summoned up here. There we go. And the Thorns is physical damage. So we're looking at a lot of physical damage. The Wolves are cold damage. So that cures the immune to physical issue. So in Hell, they could possibly be immune to physical, immune to cold. And if that's the case, well, now we're in trouble, because now we would have doubled immunities, and we'd have a lot that we have to deal with. Of course, my Ravens do a whole lot more damage now because I have all those points into Wolf. But now I also have a bigger front line, which makes it easier to deal with larger packs of monsters. But I really wonder how much easier is this going to get in Nightmare, because you lose resistances, as you see there. Oh, I left that open long enough. We lost quite a few resistances, and you have a lot more. I can't even really call them like ne'er-do-wells, but you have a lot more champions and just stronger mobs in general. So it raises an interesting question as to what's it going to be like going into say Hell difficulty. And quite frankly, I'm going to pick up Firestorm for the third one, because then now that'll give me a third damage option. Even though my build doesn't really work well with Firestorm, if you think about it, Firestorm starts out weak, but could get very strong by the end of Hell difficulty, and figuring in that I'm going to have Wolves and Ravens as well. I mean, I'll have the frontliners up there taking the damage, and I'll be just trying to nuke it with fire. Like the old meme, kill it with fire.
This is where evil hides.
Now, if anybody was going to try this challenge, I would totally recommend using rune words, because the rune words have been really what's saved me a lot of hassle. Like, this edge rune word made it a lot easier to get, the kill on Bale. And if you get, like, depending on the runes you find and how lucky you are finding those specific runes, if you can make this bow before Diablo and before Bale, which is possible, it's quite interesting. Like, it really helps out. I mean, I forgot how much Thorns damage it actually does. Ends up being like 1,500% Thorns damage or something like that. It's an astronomical amount. So yeah, that makes it easier to actually do. But, you know, it's... In hardcore, you have to really think about, you know, your character's survival and how best to keep your character alive, and I think this is the best route. Now, I mean, if you're playing like a barbarian or something, you're not going to have that. But then again, each individual character has I can't even say a nuance, but they have a way to make it easier for them to level. A second. Oh, sorry about that. They have an easier way to level. Like barbarians get double swing, and double swing eventually refunds mana. Once you get it, I think to level 12, double swing actually costs negative mana, so you will be generating mana every time you double swing. The downside is, of course, you don't have a shield, and you leave yourself vulnerable to attack. There is also other things like, you know, with Amazons, they have the ability to get Magic Arrow, so they can... Really? That you want is awful. Amazons have, you know, Magic Arrow, which costs nothing after a while. Sorceresses really don't have anything that you could one talent challenge per se. I fear that they would be one of the hardest to do.
Well,
I think a sorceress would be the hardest one to do. Because with a barbarian, you could, you know, slap on a shield, max out bash, and then just bash everything. It gives you damage, gives you attack rating, it gives you all the bread and butter you need to survive, and then you could just roll right into concentrate. Granted, you don't have any elemental damage, so immune to physical would kind of be an issue. But I'm sure there's ways around that. I'm sure there's a way that you can remedy that with a barbarian if you wanted to do a one talent challenge. Of course, you also have the elemental stuff that you could pick up on every weapon. For example, you pick up a weapon, you can socket it and put poison damage in it or lightning damage, that kind of thing. So those things do come into play. Or you can get a Act 1 mercenary who does cold arrow or something like that, magic arrow, and then put the edge bow on her and get the thorns that way. That way you're the frontliner and she's the one that does, she's the one doing the range damage and giving you the thorns. You could do that. I might have to do a sorceress just to see how tough it is. I think that'll be my next project. This is really going to raise an interesting question. Like, is this sorceress even able to do a one talent challenge? Maybe if you use lightning, because the what are they called? The lightning bolts. I don't think it's called lightning bolt. It's a spark of lightning of some kind. It goes along the ground and it fires a number of bolts based on your level. And multiple bolts can hit the same target, thus amplifying your damage. So it would be really interesting to see if they can, put forth if they can muster up enough damage to do it. They might not be able to. Might even have to go with like an Act 5 mercenary on a sorceress. That way you could have a frontliner that has a stun and has abilities like that. It's an idea. Might work. Don't know. It's really interesting. Assassins can either go traps or go, like, not Cobra Strike, but there's another strike that they can use. but they have options, is what I'm getting at. Like I think every class was given options starting out to make it so that it's easy to do on one talent. Paladins have Thorns. Thorns is a level 6 ability that has no prerequisites, so there you go. Paladins can just be like, I've got Thorns Aura, and I win the game. Which is kind of interesting that they can just Thorns Aura all the way through, through the first act, and then just kind of go from there. For that one, though, you would need Meditation Polearm and an Act 2 Mercenary. Or even an Act 3 Mercenary to hit for the elemental damage. But that might also be tough. Well, then again, you could Act 3 Mercenary for the elemental damage on a Barbarian. Then again, if you run into the double immunity, physical and whatever mercenary you got, you kind of left out in the lurch. No, I'm just kind of spitballing ideas here. Necromancers would be pretty easy. You could probably just go skeletons into skeletal mages, and then into some form of poison skill. No, because the skeletal mages have every element, so yeah, you probably just skeletons, skeletal mages, skeletal mastery, and that should carry you all the way through. Necromancers seem like they would have it pretty easy. If you're really brave, you could be a Poison Dagger Necromancer in hardcore. It's not for the faint of heart. But I sat there and I thought about this the other day. I never really used to enjoy hardcore characters. Like, I always had this almost aversion to a hardcore character because I'm sitting there thinking, man, I spent all this time on a character and then when it dies, it's gone. And then I got to thinking, not only is that a metaphor for life, if you think about it, right? You spend all your time working on your life, and then when you're gone, it's gone, right? So not only is it a metaphor for life in a hardcore character, but it got me thinking that playing a hardcore character is a lot more fun because you have to really contemplate how to play what you're playing. You can't just, just dive in, face first through a door. You really have to think about things tactically and think on your feet so that you don't put yourself in a compromised position, right? And I think that's really an interesting take on the Diablo perspective. Now, Diablo 4 and I have got some how do I want to put this? Creative differences that I would iron out. I will not be getting the expansion of Diablo 4. Can guarantee that right now. It's not worth it. You get the Spiritborn, a new act, and who cares? I mean, let's face it, the Spiritborn is nothing more than the Witch Doctor meets the Druid. Or the Monk, sorry. The Witch Doctor meets the Monk. That's all it is. But oh, Stonyfield. It's not where I need to be. I need to go kill Bloodraven. But no, it's like I sat there thinking about Diablo 4 the other day, and I'm like, there's way too many one-hit kill and easy kill mechanics to play that effectively on hardcore. And of course, people would say, well, this is where Wudijo, he's really good at Diablo 4. He was really good at Diablo 3. There was people out there that would say, well, this is where Wudijo shows his skill. That's great that he can show his skill playing Diablo 4. But I mean, let's take a step back. It's Diablo 4. Diablo 4 has got a lot of... Pardon me. Diablo 4's got a lot of... I can't even call it clout, but internet pizzazz, we'll say. A lot of people like it. In terms of, I guess, what it is. And it has followers on Twitter. And when the Diablo account, the official Diablo account, run by Blizzard, only gets 200 likes or so on any given tweet, it's kind of cooked, if you think about it.
Past, Bloodraven.
Like, when you look at it realistically, it's not in a good position. It really isn't. Because you've got, what? You've got a game that is from a company that should have tens of thousands of players. Now, granted, not all of the players are going to be on Twitter, and it makes sense. And not all the players are going to be, watching the drops come in from, from Blizzard on Twitter. But when you have tens of thousands of players, maybe even hundreds of thousands of players, though I don't think so anymore. I think it's way reduced. And in that amount of players, you're only getting maybe 100 responses. That's not good. You conversely take a look at something like Space Marines. Now, granted, Space Marines just came out, so kind of have to give it the new game pass here. Even Helldivers. Let's take a look at Helldivers. Helldivers has been out a bit of time, right? Helldivers, for example, has more people commenting and hitting like on a post than Diablo does when they talk about Diablo 4. Now, why is that? Both games are PvE, so it's not like you can say, oh, well, one game's PvP, one game's PvE. That doesn't work. So, both PvE games, both kind of just there. And yet, Helldivers, even after all of its blunders, is still getting more eyeballs in the public eye than Diablo 4. Which is strange. Now, you'd think, as popular as the Diablo franchise was, and to this day kind of is, that you'd have more people at least trying to make Diablo 4, not even just make it feel bigger, but almost indulge in it being a bigger success than it is. The other day they announced something that dealt with the Vessel of Hatred, or whatever the expansion is called. And there was only like 300 likes on it. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're talking about your expansion that you're making, and only 300 people hit like. It's not good, Blizzard. It's not good. And I'm fairly certain if it wasn't for Season of Discovery or their their classic WoW, both the hardcore and Season of Discovery and Cataclysm Classic, if it wasn't for those, I think that there wouldn't be enough money to go around for them to make the War Within and to have it work. And I fervently believe that. And the reason I believe that is I don't think the War Within is going to be a hot take, and I mean like scalding hot take. I don't think the War Within is that good. I think a lot of people are playing it because there's nothing else to play and there's a lull in the department. of games, specifically MMOs. I think the MMOs have had their moment in the sun. And I think the reason why the MMOs have had their moment in the sun is because of how this is going to be a bit of a really hot topic. Like, we're talking scorching hot. And some people might even find this, well, they can disagree. I mean, everybody's entitled to disagree, of course. But it's going to be a scorching hot topic right now. I think the reason why people don't want MMOs is you have too many people out there that are report happy. You say something, anything at all, that might be slightly misconstrued as possibly offensive, and immediately your account is reported, and all of the time, energy, and money you've put into this MMO is now basically gone. And they say, well, then just don't say something controversial. Don't say something inflammatory. Don't say something, etc., blah, blah, blah. Look, it's an MMO. The point is to get on and play with other people and build a community. And in some cases, you are going to have people who are inflammatory. You are going to have people who are going to be brash, and they're going to be careless, and they're not going to talk. They're just going to talk what's on their mind. And they're just going to be themselves. You judge them for the character they portray, and you say, you know what? This character's a douche. And you block them. That's it. That's all you do. You don't report them. You sit there and cause this mass report system that exists now, which is now automatically adjudicated and not manually reviewed. You basically just say, look, this person's a complete douche. Nobody likes him. We're not gonna interact with that. We're not gonna indulge it. We're gonna walk away. That's all it takes. You don't have to report the people that do that. Now, if they're doing something criminal, yes, report them. By all means, report them. What is it? Raltier Tal Sol, I think it is. I don't know what it is completely. Hold on. I'm also going to consolidate some gems here. Give me just 2 seconds. But no, it's that fear of reprisal that people don't want to play MMOs anymore. It's what's causing people to reel backwards away from MMOs. And they say, well, why would they want to reel backwards away from MMOs just because they can't be, brash and douchey? Well, let's put it to you this way. You are playing a role, hence the RPG, the MMORPG part. If you're going to play the role of a villain, you kind of have to be villainous. Fair assumption, I would think. Now, some people say, well, just because you're a villain doesn't mean you have to be in a certain way. To them, I say, you're right, you don't have to be exactly that way. However, this is a big however. If they can really sell the villainy role, let them. If they want to be the villain, let them. There's a reason why there's a mute button. There's a reason why there's a block button and you can block people. There's a reason things like that exist. It's to do away with people that say something that you personally find unsavory, but because you personally find it unsavory doesn't necessarily mean it warrants having them completely banned off of the game through an overly zealous mass report system. And that's what's happened. And this is why people are walking away from MMOs. Even Call of Duty's got a mass report system. That if you start playing Call of Duty and you're doing something that, people don't like, or they think you're cheating, all they do is they just mass report. they and like two of their friends mass report you, and then your account gets blacklisted or your account gets banned, and you didn't technically do anything wrong, and it's just because they're bitter. And what it is it's this. It's basically a whole bunch of players in a game are acting like petulant children because they didn't get it their way. And that's what the gaming sphere has become these days. This is why most people who play single player games, or like with Call of Duty, I don't play with voice activated. And I never will. Partially because somebody might say something in a game, and because they say something in a game, I end up having to edit a video, and I like doing the unedited format. That's number one. Or if they say something in the video, I end up getting in trouble for it, even though it wasn't my words, it was theirs. See the problem there? It's like, people need to stop being heavy-handed when it comes to that. It's like context. Words have meaning, yes, but they also have context. And if the context of the word is not there in the capacity in which you believe it to be, then it should not be a bannable offense, so to speak. It'd be like me saying something completely inflammatory in one of these videos and everybody has a problem with it, right? If they personally have a problem with it, okay, fine. I would be more than happy to talk about it in a completely unedited podcast style situation, right? I'd have no problem having that discussion. Sitting down and having an open discussion. Having open dialogue. People say, well, they'll say it anyway. You'll continue behaving the same way you always have. Well, maybe not. We won't know until that happens. That's number one. Number two is, this is the repercussions where we're at right now in society, specifically the gaming sphere of society. Where we're at right now is basically the repercussions of the cancel culture. So you had cancel culture that went around canceling everybody for the mildest things they said. You could say something completely innocuous and cancel culture flies off the handle and just like, nope, you're canceled. Now, there are some people that have done, obviously, reprehensible things, and they deserve to be canceled. Sure, absolutely. There have been people that have said reprehensible things, and to that I say, they're saying something, but they're not doing it. Bit of a difference there. See? Here, you're allowed to express your opinion. At least in society, you're allowed to express your opinion. If people don't agree with it, they can take that difference of opinion and they could just decide to vote with their wallet, so to speak, and just say, you know what, no more. And just disengage with that creator and its contents. For the way he handles things, the way they speak, or the way they approach things. And that's perfectly feasible. And that's the way it should be done. You know what? Just vote with your wallet in that regard. Because they have the ability to speak their opinion. Nothing stops them. Everybody has the ability to voice their opinions. It's one of the things we can do. Whether or not other people agree with it. Now, there are some opinions that are reprehensible, that I find personally reprehensible. And here's the big but. But if a person on a video says something that I find personally reprehensible and objectable, I'm not going to get them canceled for it. because they have the ability and the right to say it. They have the ability and the right to say and believe what they wish. That is part of their free will, and is part of their free speech. I don't agree with it, but I don't have to. I could voice my own opinion in the comment section, if I decide to, but I don't have to. And I think we've gotten far away from that as a society when the cancel culture was so rife that it quite literally consumed everything. I mean, when I say consumed everything, I mean it was... Everybody was getting canceled for legitimately everything. Now, the flip side of that coin is what we have now. People that don't care anymore. The filters have come off. People are now unabashedly speaking their mind on all things. And with them speaking their mind unabashedly on all things, now you're having the juxtaposition. People are like, well, wait a minute. These people are saying things that could be potentially hurtful. But now there's no such thing as cancel culture anymore because it got overused. I mean, there are still cancel culture. It still exists, but it's not as prolific and as powerful as it used to be because it became overused. People overdid it. They thought, well, if we can maintain the control and the power structure, we'll have no problems. And now it's slipping away from them. Because they went too totalitarianistic. If totalitarianistic is a word, that's amazing. If it's not, I just invented it. But that's what happened. They went too far one way. And then what's the repercussion from that? Anarchistic beliefs. Anarchistic actions. People just basically saying it's complete anarchy in the streets and we don't care. Now, will it swing back? Yeah, it will, eventually. But it'll take a long time. Because there are people out there today who were effectively canceled, through the most part of things. Lost their livelihood, had their families threatened, monetarily, physically, emotionally, so on and so forth. They were basically run through the ringer. And the people that watched it happen said, nah, that went too far. And so now the people that saw that went too far have stood up and said, none anymore. Not going to happen.
Yes?
So you're going to have a cycle. And this cycle's going to keep coming back around. After a while, it doubles back. What do you get? You'll have people being, it'll be the Wild West. People just doing and saying what they want. I don't necessarily agree with it. But I don't necessarily also say that it has to be removed either. The people are going to do what people do. It's a long-held mantra I've always said. People will do what people do. And there's not much you can do about it. Because that's how people are. It's just a thing. It's humans. Eventually it will tamp down. And both sides will come to a happy medium where one side will say, you know what, I don't like the way they talk, but they're allowed to say it. And the other side will sit down and be like, yeah, well, such is life, and I don't like the way these things go, but, I'll take it. And that's how it's going to end. People will eventually bridge the great divide, so to speak. It'll take a while. Don't get me wrong, it'll take a while. But what it takes is mediation. Okay? And how you have to mediate it is quite simple. You have to sit down and realize that let's say you have person A and person B. Person A makes a scumbag statement. That does not necessarily mean person A is a scumbag. Here's why. Person A may spend all of his time donating to charities. He may sit down and help the homeless and feed the hungry and decide to put all of his time and energy into very specific things that help build a community around him, that really put forth the best foot forward for everything around him. Okay? So he's not necessarily a scumbag. Okay? He says scummy things, but his actions speak louder than words. Person B, on the other hand, says all the niceties and all the things you want to hear, but is not a good person at all. We're talking a guy that would take from a church collection plate, kind of scummy, right? A guy that leaves an IOU as a tip. Yeah. And trust me, I've known a couple people that have done that. They've left an IOU as a tip. Not exactly a good guy. But they say all the nice things, and they tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. Now, who's worse? The guy that behaves badly, or the guy that speaks badly? They both do things that someone finds distasteful, but when it all boils down, are the actions weighted heavier than the words? The thing is with words, and this is where I think this is the hinge pin, so to speak, of this whole discussion. I think the whole hinge pin of this discussion is words are easier to misconstrue, words are easier to take out of context, and words are easier to travel than actions. Okay? For actions to be witnessed, for actions to be monitored and quantified, they must be seen. If an action is not seen, it goes unheard. If an action goes unheard, well, then the action falls on no one. No one sees it. No one can interact with it. No one can justify it. No one can say, oh, hey, he's actually a good person. I saw him, tending to sick animals. Nobody saw it. But the words are there. The words travel. The words travel fast. And because words travel faster than actions, people often jump to a conclusion before all the factors are heard. This causes an issue. This causes people to jump to a conclusion and make rash judgments of character. Now, I'm not one to try to judge character. I'm not one to sit down and say, so-and-so is a bad person because ... and then go from there. Also, I can't seem to find the tunnel. Found everything else but the tunnel. No, I'm not a person that will tend to jump to conclusions and jump to a rush to judgment. There are people that do things that I disagree with. There are people that have certain views. Oh, it's right there. There are people that have certain views that I disagree with. There are people that have opinions that I disagree with. But I still sit down and have cordial civil discussion with them. And it doesn't make me any better of a person than they are. They're still a person. But the reason I do it is for a sense of not really understanding, but a sense of comprehension. I seek to comprehend what people are thinking, why they are thinking the way they think, and do the actions they have. It's in that seeking of comprehension that makes me look at people differently and try to take a different approach, if that makes sense. Many people today immediately rush to judgment and they jump off the handle and they are like, yep, this person's bad because of these reasons, and they list them, and then you never really get out of that stigma. I should know. And people have done this to me, specifically. I've been the object of stigma. I've been the object of scrutiny and scorn. Been down there. Multiple times. But it did not dissuade me. In no way did I take a step back and say, you know what? They're right. In no way did I take a step back and just throw my hands up in the air and say, well, they got me. They nailed my, hide to the wall. Nope. I didn't want to put that there. I'm doing a self-found mode. This druid was a ladder character till it switched. But no, it's not once did it happen.
What you need?
I sat there, I contemplated, and I found out that even though I didn't agree with them, even though I become the object of their scrutiny and scorn, that I knew who I was. I knew in my heart of hearts who I was, and my value, and what I was and what I was worth to myself, and to those around me that matter. And I went on with my life. Now that sounds like I'm being dismissive of other people. Well, I suppose it is, a little bit dismissive, but let's go a little further. When you're the object of scrutiny and scorn, even if it is ill-placed scrutiny and scorn, which in most cases mine was. A lot of my scrutiny and scorn came about when people who knew things that my father had said, and knew the things he had done that were morally correct, but people didn't care for, they took it out on me. Because I am the progeny of my father, so pretty much like the sins of the father carried forth. Having been the case, I found it interesting that not a lot of people, there are people out there that do like me. I can't say I'm a well-liked individual. I can say that some people like me, some people don't, and that's the way it is with everything. But I also can't say that I'm trying to get people to like me either. If that makes sense. Alright? I'm going to get to the Darkwood, and then I'm going to call it for this video, and I'll be back on the next video. But I will say this. I got to the point where I was no longer seeking the acceptance of others. And people would be like, oh, here we go. He's going to start talking about Sigma rules and start playing, that's funk music from TikTok. No, I'm not gonna go that far because that'll get copyright strikes. But I just don't. It doesn't matter if I have the acceptance of others. I accept me for who I am, and much like with every single person, they should love themselves for themselves, with no exception. Everybody should love themselves. And I don't mean... People like to take that the wrong way. People like to really misconstrue that. I don't mean love yourself in such a way that is egotistical or egocentric. I mean it in the purest form of self-love and self-acceptance. And by that, I mean, you take a look at who you are on the inside. You take a look at your qualities. You take a look at your essence of who you truly are. Ooh, Ghost Armor. I could put Tal F in there. Then it wouldn't drain as much stamina. Interesting. I'll do that. I'll do exactly that. Do I have an F? I do. There's an F. There's a Tal. So we go Tal F. Yeah. And now that I have stealth armor on there,
I'll put that to good use.
he can have my stealth armor. There we go. Burns less stamina that way because it's lighter armor. You don't think that matters, but it actually does. It's weird how it does. But back to this whole self-acceptance thing, self-love thing. And that's what it's about. Be sure of who you are. Be sure of your own 2 feet. Be sure of the ground you stand on. Be sure of your morals. Be sure of who you are as an individual. Be sure of your thoughts. Be sure of your actions. Now people say, wait a minute. You're kind of getting a little philosophical there. Because you're kind of going off into the ether and being really philosophical. And to that I say yes. Why shouldn't I? It's worth it. Now, I've not found the waypoint yet, but I will end this video here, and I will continue this philosophical discussion in the next one. So make sure you tune into that one as well. I hope to have the rest of Act 1, or at least most of Act 1, finished on Nightmare by then. But I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I hope you have a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.